Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords, and first of all, we've got here, this is the Old School Companion 1, which is a platinum bestseller, by the way, and I have just come out this past month with the Old School Companion 3. Now, what are the differences between 1, 2, and 3? So 1 is a compilation of a variety of things that you can use. I did a review of it. You can watch in the review playlist. You can find the Old School Companion 1 flip through. It's got a variety of different things like magical techniques, some new classes, NPC classes. It has supplements about medieval activities and life. All these things that are each modular individual chapters, self-contained, that you can pick out and use in your own campaigns for medieval authentic play. The Old School Companion 2 is very different in that it is a set of adventures. That book is entirely an adventure book. It has 24, 28, I forget which of the two, adventures that are all kind of sandbox adventures, and they're all either based on real medieval history or real medieval legends or real medieval folklore, or in some cases even real medieval songs. Okay, and these are they're all really excellent adventures. They can very easily be kind of translated into any other setting, pretty much. So there you have it. Now, Old School Companion 3 comes back to being more like the Old School Companion 1. It has new systems of ritual magic in it. It has monsters. It has techniques for having adventures in different contexts, like if you're in a medieval college or if you're in the medieval aristocracy and things like that. And then it has like 3 completely detailed medieval cities from medieval England, like real ones, right? With every detail of what was in there and what they were like and how, what the society was, the culture, which you could port into any setting, basically. So that's what the Old School Companion 3 is all about. All right, it's very similar to the Old School Companion 1, but with completely new content, right? So check that out. You can get it from DriveThru. The link is in the description in this video, okay? And while you're at it, also go to the Red Room store and check out the Pundit Files, where there is now 30 issues of the Pundit Files that are all available for you. Every single one of them has something interesting and different to use in your games. And every single one only costs about $3.50, okay? So if you can get $3.50, you can buy yourself an issue of the Pundit Files. All right, so on to the main topic. Now, here's the thing. On Sunday, I was supposed to interview John Delarose. He couldn't make it because he got sick at like the last minute. He had less than 3 hours notice, or I got less than 3 hours notice. He might have sent the message earlier, but I didn't see it until then. And so instead, I did a live stream by myself. It was not an episode of the RPG Pundit Encounter. It doesn't count. It was just my live stream where I did an AMA basically with the chat. It was fantastic. It's 90 minutes long. I suggest you check it out. There's lots of very interesting stuff there that we talked about. Most of which was the immediately topical stuff of what has been going on recently, like Perkins quitting, the crisis with Wizards of the Coast, the problems with the VTT, the problems with tariffs, the problems with the writing, the quality of the people left in Wizards of the Coast, Steve Jackson Games, almost everything that was kind of in the RPG news this past week. I blew the whole wad of it right there in the RPG Pundit Encounter live stream. That was really just an encounter with the RPG Pundit. So I've been trying to work out what should I talk about today, right? Because I need to do another video, and there hasn't been much more new. There hasn't been any really new news from the time I did that live stream, which for me was now 2 days ago, until the time of this video. So I was kind of trying to think through. This is always why I love suggestions from people, and I often keep a little list of certain suggestions people have made of the kind of videos they would like to see me, what topics they would like to see me talking about. So if you have suggestions of things you would really like to see me talking about, feel free to suggest it. The worst thing that can happen is that I just don't do it, but maybe the best thing is I might actually do it. All right. And so one of these things that was in the suggestion box that I found very interesting was this question that someone had, or I don't know if it was a question or because I just put down like a little note there, but I'm not sure if it was a question or if it was a suggestion or if it was a kind of just I guess a statement, right? It might have been something that they were doing of having a setting with no humans. And I found that very interesting. At the time, I was like, well, okay, whatever, right? but in fact, it's a very interesting question, specifically because I have often talked before about how essentially you can definitely have a game where the only race you can play is human, right? In fact, in most of my games, that's the case. In Arrows of Indra, which was my earliest RPG of this, of an OSR sort anyway, you had non-human characters that you could play. There were some non-human races like the Gandharvas and the monkey people. But if I did it again today, I wouldn't have those even as playable races, right? You just have to be human. And so because for me, and I've said this before, right? And there's a video, I've got a video here that's called Your Favorite Race Sucks Unless It's Human. Okay, and in that video I make a point out of why playing anything else is actually inferior to playing a human. Because essentially, in an RPG, you are either playing one of two things, basically. You're either playing a human, and you're actually playing a human character, or you are playing a non-human character, like a character race that isn't human, that you are playing as exactly as human, pretty much, right? Like they're basically just humans. They have all the same human feelings, all the same human behaviors, the full gamut of that, which is the less common thing, strangely enough, but it is still quite common. And in fact, it's what it devolves into when any player plays a non-human race. I'll more on that in a second. And then the second option is you're playing a character who is some kind of a stereotype, right? It's a stereotype, I am the Klingon, I am the proud warrior race. I follow all these stereotypes of the proud warrior race, And that's fine, but that's still just a stereotype that it means a very limited range of characteristics of humanity itself, okay? It's still not inhuman, right? So essentially, you're playing a kind of extremely retarded human with that, right? And with the other one, you're playing a human in denial. A human that is pretending not to be a human for some reason, right? There went Domino. She just ran right past. She's in her zoomy state. Oh, there she is. You can see her right at the corner of the video. She's investigating stuff. There's a lot of wind outside, and I think that's raised her hackles a bit or something. I don't know if she has hackles yet. She might be too young to have hackles. But anyway, so those are largely the real options when you're doing this. So the question becomes, if you're saying, well, we're going to make a setting that has no humans in it, everything is non-human, I'm pretty sure that you'd still end up having the two results of everything either being humans. It's like there are lots of settings where the most famous one is Talisanta, is a setting that supposedly has no elves. And then it actually has 7 different classes that are all just elves. They're all just slightly different types of elves, So it's really stupid. And elves are just a stereotype of humans, right? They're the kind of effete noble humans, or maybe the woodsy noble humans, the pretty boy humans, right? But in whatever the case, it's still stereotypical of a human, right? So there's, in essence, nothing really that you can do to really adequately play a non-human as a player character. That's for sure. Now, obviously, you can play non-human entities as a DM. You can play them as NPCs. And that ranges everything from a zombie or a ghost, which is something that's a former human at least, all the way to playing, demons, entities of pure evil, creatures of fairy, creatures of whimsy. But you don't do that just by playing them as human stereotypes. You do that by attributing to them one of two things. I mean, you can make them human stereotypes, because there's nothing wrong with that per se, but especially for an NPC. The problem for it, if you're a player character, is that you start that way, right? You'll start with saying, you know, I'm the proud warrior culture guy, or I'm, you know, I'm the sophisticated effete noble that is, you know, above everybody else or something. And then gradually you will end up defaulting back into a more generalized human that just has strong versions of that particular qualification, right? But it's still just a human, right? You're still playing a human. It's not a really alien entity. It's just a human with pointy ears, right? And because it's a stereotyped human, it is less interesting than playing any other normal kind of human, right? Like if you're playing Arrows of Indra and you're playing a character of any of the social castes of India, of any of the backgrounds of India, or in fact, if you're playing a foreigner, a foreign barbarian, right? Suddenly for some reason there's some Akkadian that's in that's in Bharata, right? Or in Dark Albion, you want to play a Moor on the streets of London, which was not impossible, not nearly as common as the BBC likes to think, but but not impossible, right? That would still be much more interesting than playing a dwarf, okay? Because the way you're going to play a dwarf as a player character is going to be a more stereotyped thing. That even if, let's pretend you want to play a Moor, you don't know a ton about Moorish culture, but you're going to try, and some of what you say and do with that character will be stereotypical, probably. Yeah, stereotypical, or just, you know, obviously some of it might not be factual. You might get things wrong depending on how much you know about medieval Moors, which is probably not much. You know, even I don't know that much about medieval Moors. I'd have to look into it really carefully, but you probably wouldn't even, you know, most of you do not have history degrees, so you wouldn't do that, but you would try. Let's say you're sincerely trying. It's not a joke character. You're not trying to be mocking or insulting in any way, right? But you want to play more. Okay. So you have this guy. He will still be a little bit stereotypical, but because he is by default human, he'll get to be much more human. He can behave any way he wants, because a human can behave any way he wants within the gamut of human experience. If you had made him, you know, an elf or a dwarf, you have this idea of him being bound to elfhood or dwarfhood, which is stereotypical. And if you don't do that, he just turns into another human like everybody else, whatever, right? So it's the Moorish character, the Moorish human is more interesting than any kind of dwarf elf that you could play, right? Unless you were to play one like totally alien, but as a player character, if you do that, you're not going to be very happy, right? Because the only way to play a character that is not either just a human with funny ears or a human stereotype is to play an entity that is truly alien, right? So now you can play as a DM, you can run non-human characters as being archetypal, obviously, we know that, right? But then you want to really stick to that archetype, right? Because the idea is that if they're really not human, then there have to be things that humans are and do that is just beyond their understanding. And there should be things that they are and do that is beyond human understanding, right? Like it shouldn't just be, you know, oh, we're dwarves, so we lust for gold and we like to drink a lot and we fight with axes. Right? You have to add some stuff in there that is behavior that if a human looks at it, right? Like with a cat, right? There are things that cats do that are immediately understandable to us, right? They're like, oh, we feel that way too, right? When we're scared, when we're in pain or whatever, or when we're happy, right? When we want to cuddle, right? But then there are other things that cats do that are strange, but that with enough work, you could kind of start to figure out why are they doing this. It's a weird thing it's doing, but there's a reason, and I kind of can understand that reason. And then there are things that cats do. And keep in mind, cats are some of the most human animals in the world because they're domesticated creatures, right? Cats, dogs, totally different than, say, I don't know, a 10,000-year-old dire wolf we've just revived, right? But, you know, even then, there are many, many things that cats do that none of us understand why. Okay, that are just beyond our ken, right? And we don't know why they act in this stupid fashion, right? And that would have to be a trait of any character that was actually not a human. That there would be stuff that they would do that would seem unbelievably random and not in a like, oh my god, so random type of way, right? So if you really wanted to have a character, that it could be a stereotypical character. It could be also a character, especially in kind of the medieval authentic traditions, or for that matter, the epic myth tradition, sorry, Arrows of Indra, you could have a character that was representative of some kind of moral virtue or vice. That's in fact, in as much as like monsters of the classical era and the medieval era, contrary to what people believe now, what some idiots believe now, those monsters were not meant to represent people of other races as a rule. They were usually meant to represent a moral allegory for some type of vice or virtue. Okay, so either gluttony or wrath, or it could be charity, or it could be fortitude, right? It could be good stuff or bad stuff, but they're like living embodiments of those things. So you could do that. And if you wanted them to be entirely alien and not a stereotype of either a vice or a stereotype of some kind of archetype, a vice, a virtue, or an archetype. Those are in essence your three options. If you didn't want to do that, you would pretty much have to end up like with an entity that is at least a very significant period of the time. And this is kind of how I run my elves, by the way, right? To the point that, you know, there's in some of my Lion and Dragon campaigns, people are like, what the hell is going on? Oh, don't worry, that's elf shit. That's elves doing elf shit, right? Like, people run into elves, they expect them to be like, I don't know, like maybe like the high elves from the Lord of the Rings or Forgotten Realms. My elves aren't like that. My elves do a whole bunch of weird shit, right? Like, so, you know, they randomly go around and they must demand that a woman either give them a ribbon from their hair, or he'll take their virginity, right? Possibly even without consideration, let's say. And it's like, and that's not because the guy is lusty. It's because it's some kind of magic thing, right? And that like if you throw a sheet over this elf, then he'll lose all his power, right? And all that sort of stuff. That like it seems to defy not just normal human behavior, but even like normal reason, right? Like the nature of when you're running into like these fairy creatures or demons or angels, it should seem as if like the laws of reality itself are melting around you, right? Everything around you makes no sense anymore, right? Like you can't hurt this elf with your sword, but you know if you end up throwing a mistletoe at him, he'll flee in terror, right? As if you had like turned him or something, like an undead, right? Like stuff like that, right? That sort of stuff it's completely senseless from human perspective. And your player characters, you know, part of the problem of having, like, if you've got player characters who are elves, that goes right out the window because they can't act like that all the time, right? And it would eventually be a really poor character for them to play in that way because they can't. They could not grasp the real motivations of the things that their own character is doing, you know. So it's part of the reason why it's better to play a setting the way it's all humans. But to conclude, can you do a setting that has no humans in it? Well, sure. But if you do, I guarantee you it has humans in it. There's going to be a race that is going to be like, okay, this is the default race, right? This is the equivalent of a human. Because otherwise it's going to be a very unsuccessful game, right? Like somebody, I guess, could do something where all of the classes are only like stereotypical, or all the races rather, are only stereotypical races. Those stereotypical races are eventually, like, there's going to be nothing to hold the group together, right? So like, if what you're relying on is stereotype races, forget it. And if you're relying on the other thing, if you really mean there are no humans, which means that there's no one that acts like a human, because you could have some monster, right? Like some kind of eight-legged giant centipede, you know, with wings, and you know, and high-tech cybernetic implants. But if it behaves like a 21st century human from, you know, the west coast of America, then it's a human, right? Everything else you're doing is just a cosplay attempt. On the other hand, if it doesn't behave human, if it behaves truly alien, you're not gonna, you know, that campaign's gonna fall apart immediately, right? Like, the real non-humans can't act like humans, or else they're human, right? That's all they are. This is not something that works that way. So when you say, oh, there are no humans in this game, like you can say, oh no, there's no humans. There's elves, dwarves, halflings, right? And we've got a couple of other things. And, you know, all of them represent different, like, stereotypes of humans. So all you've done is made a bunch of, how would you call it? Developmentally delayed humans, right? Or, you know, to say special needs humans, right? Humans that have limited mental and psychological capacities. That's the creature that you have created, right? It's super boring. All right. So that's my position on this. It's an interesting thought experiment, which is why I thought I would talk about it today. I know that some of you prefer me ranting about wizards, but you know, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to run on that, because I don't know how much longer D&D Wizards is going to be around. I'm going to be honest with you, but I'll keep trying that, and you know, when there's more news, I'll give it. But I thought this was a nice thing from the list of suggestions people wanted to hear me talking about. So if you have any suggestions, please post them in the comments. I always love that. And, well, check out all my products. The link is in the description below. Share this video anywhere you think people will find it interesting or get pissed off about it. And it's funny how many people get pissed off when I say that their elf that they're portraying is less interesting than a normal human. But it's true. It's absolutely true. There is no such thing as a non-human character that is more interesting to play than a human character that has the full gamut of potential human actions, right? Because every other character is either just a human, and you're pretending it's not a human, or it's in some way a limited human, or it's this random role thing that is going to be completely alien and will behave in ways no one will comprehend, right? So those are your options. All right, check out all my products, check out all my stuff. At some point soon, I'll have the Old School Companion 3 here to review. I've got lots of other books to review as well. And we will see you guys soon. Currently smoking. This is a Nira Poker plus Argento Roots.